Yo, get off me. I didn't take nothing. The crowd formed fast. It was the kind of neighborhood where sirens didn't turn heads anymore. But today was different. Because today, it wasn't just any cop on the scene. It was Officer Thompson. And the kid screaming in front of him? That was Jalen Reed, 16 years old, already one foot in the system, and the other on cracked pavement. He had his hands shoved in his hoodie pocket, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The store clerk stood to the side, arms folded, insisting Jalen had slipped a pair of wireless earbuds into his sleeve and walked out. Thompson hadn't cuffed him. Not yet. He just stood there, hand hovering near his belt, voice low and even. "Take your hands out your pockets, son." But Jalen wasn't having it. Not from him. Not from a black cop. "You ain't my son, man." Jalen spit. "You just a thug with a badge. Selling out for scraps." Gasps. Someone whispered, "Damn." Phones were already up. Cameras rolling. Officer Thompson didn't flinch. He didn't grab his baton. Didn't reach for his gun. He just looked at Jalen. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Something else. A pause that felt like forever stretched between them, until backup sirens echoed down the street. That's when Jalen ran. But he didn't get far. Not because Thompson chased him. Because he didn't have to. As Jalen turned the corner, he slammed right into a wall of blue. Another officer coming from the other side. Jalen hit the ground hard, face scraping against the concrete. The earbuds? They skidded out of his sleeve, landing just inches from his fingers. Game over. Or so everyone thought. 3 hours later, a blurry video from the scene hit TikTok. The title, "Cop Gets Called a Thug by Teen." His reaction says everything. It had over 700,000 views by midnight. The comments lit up like wildfire. Why didn't he arrest him right away? That kid needs to learn respect. Crazy that even our own people treat us like this SMH. Nah, there's more to this. Look at the way he looked at him. And buried between the jokes and arguments was a quiet reply. "Y'all don't know Officer Thompson like we do. That man been through hell to wear that badge. Watch what comes next." The next day, Jalen sat in the principal's office, suspension papers already printed. He wasn't angry anymore, just blank. Outside the door, Officer Thompson stood waiting, not to press charges, not to lecture, just waiting. And in his hand, a folded piece of paper, old, worn, edges frayed, a photo of a boy about Jalen's age, standing in front of a courthouse, in handcuffs. But the twist? The boy in the picture was Thompson. And just like that, this wasn't just about earbuds. It was about everything that led here. They thought they knew what the video showed. But like most things that go viral, it only told part of the story. By morning, the video of Jalen and Officer Thompson had passed 1 million views. The title was clickbait. The comments were war zones. Another black kid getting harassed. What else is new? That cop's face, though. He didn't even react. That's scary. Didn't that kid steal something? Thug with a badge, damn. He said it like he meant it. In classrooms and barbershops, on timelines and Twitter threads, everybody had a take. Jalen, meanwhile, had gone silent, suspended from school, his phone buzzing nonstop. People were calling him bold, brave, even reckless. But inside, he just felt tired. Because while the world debated what he'd said, no one cared to ask why he said it. That afternoon, his mother's voice cut through the noise. "You're trending for the wrong reasons, Jalen." She slid her phone across the table. A new video. Same angle, same moment. But this one had been slowed down, captioned, and picked apart like evidence at a crime scene. Notice the way Officer Thompson doesn't flinch. That's not apathy. That's history. The voice in the video was calm. Too calm. Like a teacher unwrapping trauma for a class that didn't want to learn. And then came the twist. The plot twist wasn't about Jalen. It was about Thompson. A follow-up post had surfaced, an old news article scanned and reposted by someone from the neighborhood. The headline, "Local teen avoids prison after brutal beating. Judge cites potential worth saving." The face in the mugshot, barely recognizable, was Officer Marcus Thompson, 17 years old, bloody lip, defiant eyes. He'd been arrested for nearly killing a man who attacked his younger brother outside a laundromat. Charges were dropped after a teacher wrote a 10-page letter on his behalf. That teacher, now retired, still living in the neighborhood, still remembered him as the boy who learned how to hold back when the world begged him to swing. Back online, the tone began to shift. Wait, Thompson was locked up as a teen. So he was that kid once. Bro really came from it. Now I feel stupid. The narrative fractured. Some apologized. Others doubled down. But for Jalen, the damage was done. Because the next twist wasn't digital. It was personal. That evening, a group of students, ones who had once nodded at him in the halls, walked past him like he was invisible. The girl who used to laugh at his jokes now whispered something to her friend and looked away. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a rebel. He was just the kid who called the wrong man a thug. Late that night, he opened his messages. A new DM. No name. No profile pic. You said what a lot of us think. But you said it to the one man who actually gets it. You ever talk to him? Really talk? Jalen stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. He didn't reply. But his next move wasn't what anyone expected. He went to his closet, reached behind the boxes, pulled out something no one knew he still had. A poem, written 2 years ago, about his father, locked away, wrongfully accused, forgotten. Same system, same story, different uniform. It started with a knock, not loud, not urgent, just steady. Jalen opened the front door, expecting his probation officer, or worse, another journalist looking to spin his story for clicks. But it was him, Officer Marcus Thompson. No uniform, no badge, just jeans, a hoodie, and something else Jalen hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Mind if I come in? Thompson asked. Jalen paused, not because he was scared, but because something in the man's voice cracked. They sat at the kitchen table like strangers, but the air between them, it wasn't tense. It was tired. Thompson reached into his pocket and pulled out the old photo, the one from before him in cuffs, 17, staring down a sentence that could have swallowed him whole. That's me, he said. You think you know who I am, but this was who I was before they let me forget. And then, for the first time, he told the truth. Back in '99, Thompson wasn't officer anything. He was just Marcus, a kid on the wrong side of every statistic. His mom worked 3 jobs. His little brother had asthma and no insurance. And the night all flipped. It wasn't some gang beef or robbery. It was a man with a knife and a little brother screaming behind him. Marcus fought. Didn't stop until the man stopped breathing. They called it assault with intent. Tried to make it murder. Said he was out of control. But his teacher, the one person who saw past his hoodie and hard stare, wrote a letter that changed everything. Called him a protector, not a predator. That letter saved me, Thompson said, voice tight. But the streets didn't care. Neither did the system. I wore that record like a stain no matter how hard I tried to clean it. Years later, we became a cop. They tried to keep it quiet, tried to bury it, because a black officer with a juvie record didn't fit the image, didn't fit the narrative. So he let it stay buried, until Jalen's words dug it back up. You called me a thug, Thompson said, and it hit different, because for a minute, I believed it again. Jalen looked down. The shame hit slow, then sharp, but then came the twist he didn't see coming. You know what saved me back then? Thompson asked. Not the badge, not the system, a notebook. He reached into his bag and placed a worn composition book on the table. Pages full of poetry, rage, grief, dreams, all in ink. He flipped to a page from 2001, a poem titled, Things I Never Said to My Father. Jalen blinked. I wrote the same thing. He whispered, about yours. Thompson asked. Jalen nodded. Didn't speak. Didn't have to. 2 boys, same city, different decades, same wound. They never gave us space to be soft, Thompson said, standing. So we fought. With fists, with words, with silence. I'm not here to arrest you, Jalen. I'm here to make sure you don't become another version of me, buried in a uniform, hiding the cracks. He handed Jalen the notebook. told him to write something new. Not for TikTok, not for apology, just for truth. And that night, Jalen wrote, not about the earbuds, not about the fight, not even about Thompson, but about his father, and a world that punishes pain disguised as defiance. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It started with a letter, but not just any letter, a letter that had been hidden, buried under years of shame. Jalen didn't know it yet, but that letter was the key to everything. That morning, Jalen stood at the edge of a decision. He could follow the familiar path, stay silent, stay angry, keep fighting against the system that had cast him aside. Or he could speak up, use the story of his own pain to change the narrative, one word at a time. He walked into school, and for the first time in days, he didn't feel invisible. The hallway buzzed with whispers. His name was everywhere, not as a criminal, not as a statistic, but as someone with a voice. But then, as the bell rang, Jalen saw something, a familiar figure, Thompson, but not in uniform. He stood by the door to the principal's office, talking to a detective, someone Jalen recognized from the news. The detective was holding a manila envelope, shaking his head. As Jalen approached, he heard fragments of their conversation. "We're still piecing together the surveillance footage, but we need a statement." "I know," Thompson said, "but I'm not saying what you think I'm saying. I'm telling you, there's more to it. There always has been." Jalen stopped dead in his tracks. The twist hit him like a punch. Thompson wasn't there to arrest someone. He was investigating himself. That afternoon, Jalen sat alone in the library, notebook in front of him. He tried to write, tried to focus, but the words weren't coming. Everything he had written up until now, every angry, painful word, had been because he felt lost, confused, like the world owed him something. But this letter was different. The letter was from Thompson's mother. Jalen hadn't known about her until now. But this letter, it had been addressed to Marcus long before he ever became Officer Thompson. It was written the day after Jeremiah died, the day her son fell apart. The letter wasn't about grief. It was about forgiveness. "I raised you both to be better than what the world tried to make you. But I see you, Marcus. I see the boy who still believes in justice, even if it's broken. And I see you trying to fix things that can never be fixed. The world owes you nothing, but you owe yourself this. Stop hiding. Stop being the man you were never meant to be. Stand up for the kid you used to be, before the badge and the pain buried you. Please, Marcus, forgive yourself. Please." Jalen's hands shook as he read those words. Forgive yourself. He couldn't remember the last time he had heard those words, not from anyone, not from himself. The man who had seemed so distant, so impenetrable, was a man who had never forgiven himself. Jalen didn't know what to do with the letter. He couldn't keep it, but he couldn't throw it away either. That's when he realized the truth. The system doesn't break people. People break themselves. And sometimes, in trying to fix the world, they lose themselves in the process. That night, Jalen sat in front of his computer, staring at the blinking cursor. He had one chance, one moment, to do what no one else had done before. He picked up his phone, tapped the screen, and there it was, the viral video from the day he'd confronted Thompson. But this time, he didn't just post it. This time, he wrote, "I called Officer Thompson a thug, but that's not what he is. He's a man who lost everything. He's a man who still thinks he has to pay for it." We're all walking around with our own pain, but that doesn't mean we have to bury it. We have to find a way to stand up for each other, even when we don't know how to stand for ourselves. This is my apology, but it's not just for him. It's for me. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it won't be shaped by the past. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be free. He pressed send. By morning, the post had gone viral, but not in the way he'd expected. People weren't talking about the fight. They weren't talking about the earbuds. They were talking about the letter, the apology, the vulnerability, the courage. Jalen's words became a catalyst. The investigation into Thompson continued, but it wasn't the same anymore. He was no longer the villain. He was just a man, like the rest of them, trying to find a way to heal. And Jalen, he didn't have all the answers, but he had something. Hope. The courtroom was quiet. except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. The steady rhythm felt louder with every passing second, like a countdown. Jalen sat in the front row, his hands clenched, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had led him here. It had been a long road, one full of anger, questions, and raw emotions. But today felt different. Officer Marcus Thompson stood at the front of the room, his face hard as stone, his eyes focused ahead. The case wasn't about him anymore. It was about something else, something much bigger. The truth. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of misconduct, the judge said, voice echoing in the quiet room. Jalen's heart dropped. He had expected this. They would never convict a cop, no matter how deep the investigation went, no matter the evidence. But it wasn't just the case. It was everything that had happened to get here. Flashback. 3 months ago, Jalen had been angry. Angry at Thompson, angry at the system, angry at the world. But now, as he sat in this courtroom, he realized he wasn't angry anymore. Jalen wasn't just here for justice. He was here because he realized the truth. Justice wasn't just about what the system handed down. It was about what you could take back. Thompson turned to face Jalen in the crowd. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Jalen could see it. The man who had tried so hard to bury his past, now standing on the other side of his redemption. A chance. A choice. Thompson stepped down from the witness stand and walked over to Jalen, his face torn with both regret and relief. "I thought I could hide," Thompson said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the thing is, it's not about hiding anymore." In the moment of unexpected vulnerability, Thompson did something that no one had anticipated. He resigned. Right there in the courtroom, with the verdict still fresh, Thompson placed his badge on the table. "I'm not the man I was," he said, looking down. "I wasn't the man you needed me to be. But I'm trying now. I'll do outside the system, where I don't hide behind it." Jalen's heart raced. He hadn't expected that. Not in a million years. But then it made sense. Thompson wasn't running from responsibility. He was facing it head-on, no longer using the badge as a shield. As the room began to stir, the sound of papers being shuffled and reporters clicking their pens, Jalen felt his phone buzz. It was a message from his mom. "I'm proud of you, baby. You've been trying so hard to understand, but sometimes it's not about being right. It's about seeing." The weight of those words hit Jalen hard. His mom had always said that. She said seeing was more important than understanding. It was seeing the truth, both the ugliness and the beauty. Jalen stood up, his hands trembling slightly, and stepped toward Thompson. They didn't shake hands. They didn't say anything else. But there was a silent understanding between them. Jalen turned toward the exit, his chest tight, his mind racing. But then, before he could reach the door, he stopped. He saw something. A newspaper headline hanging on the wall in the hallway. It read, "Officer resigns. Takes stand for redemption." Jalen stared at it, the realization washing over him. This wasn't just about his fight. It was about every fight. And maybe, just maybe, people could change. Not just the ones who made the headlines, but the ones who were still trying to do better every day. Jalen paused in the doorway. He took a deep breath and turned back to look at Thompson. "Do you think we're free yet?" Jalen asked, his voice steady. Thompson didn't answer immediately. He just looked at Jalen, his eyes filled with a quiet, painful recognition. And then, finally, he spoke. "I don't know, but we're trying. That's enough for now."